Hello, everybody. Cheers, Dana.
Good evening. Cheers. Welcome back in the office.
Yeah. Get the Wawa Dunkin'. We'll have to do a poll, an informal poll sometime, and see who everybody. Starbucks obviously is out for real coffee drinkers, but for the rest of us, what's your favorite? Wawa.
Well,
Dunkin'.
See, that depends. The ones that are open at 11 o'clock at night. It's in Edgewater, 5 miles, maybe something. It's not very far.
Wawa has $1 coffee right now.
And they also had the pumpkin spice.
October. See.
And then they have the wake up mocha. I always put in first and mix it with the coffee.
Got it. What's up, guys? What's up, Mama? Hazel up, Vicky. Wawa, right, Mike? At $1, how can you go wrong?
That's true. Prices are great.
Hello, Yaya. So, as usual, I meant to bring back, if anybody remembers, we were going to do a joke. We started with a joke a couple months, well, I don't know, about a month ago, and I meant to have a new one, and I did not. Alas, I failed. So, we're going to jump right in. Last week, our topic was going to be short sales and foreclosures, and we quickly figured out that that was far too large a topic to digest in one sitting. So we changed to short sales, and we only covered the listing side of things. So we're going to touch on that real quick, kind of recap what we told you about that, and then move right into the buy side of short sales. And that you can figure out already is a sort of a landmine. It's a big, huge pit of weird things. So, Dana, do you want to touch on the recap a little bit from the listing side of things from last week?
No.
Okay, I'll do it.
You caught me dangerous.
That's fine. The gist of it is you need to have a professional. It needs to be negotiated by an attorney, and you need to have an agent who is familiar with the process, and you have to have your ducks in a row as a seller as to what your hardship is. And of course, Dana's
got to be good,
right? It's looking good. So okay, so let's talk about the buy side of things. And as always, let us know. Feel free to message Dana or I if you have any questions outside of this. We hear from a lot of you, so we're happy to talk about that side of things. So.
Buy side.
What should I know, Dana?
What should you know? Well, for starters, there's nothing short about a short sale, which we said last week, but it's my go-to saying for every buyer who wants to buy a short sale. You can definitely get into short sales if you are prepared to wait. So it works well sometimes if it's and obviously you want to do CMA and make sure what the value is. And there's questions that need to be asked along the way to the listing agent. How long it's been listed for? Has anything been turned into the bank yet?
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
When the bank, or when a house is listed as a short sale, and you write a full price offer, will the bank take that offer?
Not necessarily, because we don't know if the listing agent did their job, and we don't know how much is owed on that property. So you might see a property for $300,000, but maybe they bought it in 2007 and 2008 for $500,000 or $450,000, and the bank is not prepared to eat $150,000.
But I don't understand, Dana. The house is listed for $300,000, and I wrote a full price contract.
Well, let me circle back around to maybe sometimes what we do is unfortunately, somebody has to be the guinea pig for short sales, because the bank is not going to tell anybody on the front side when you list the property how much they're actually going to take for that short sale. So you have to guess.
Well, and let me interject there for a second. What the reasoning behind that from the bank standpoint, especially in the beginning of short sales, there's so many of them, thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And they didn't want to go through all the red tape and all the paperwork of adjudicating the short sale and giving a number to the seller if there was nobody willing to buy at that price. So now what they do is they reverse the process. They say, all right, you go get me a contract, and then once you get me a contract,
then we'll talk.
They'll talk. And so what happens with a lot of agents, they list a house at a really aggressive price to generate activity, and they get an offer, and a lot of times they get full price, maybe even better, but it still might be $50,000 or $100,000 below market value, and so far below market value that the bank is not willing to take that hit. And they say, you know what, we'd rather foreclose than sell it ourselves.
That's right.
So, and again, one of our common themes, you get a good agent like Dana, and he's going to know going in. And so, and what we tell, it's sort of managing your expectations, because there are times, like if you are living in your parents' basement and you have this opportunity to get this fantastic deal, then it might be worth it for you to
wait 6 months or 8 months or even a year that it could take to get a short sale.
Right. And
then also the other thing that you have to keep in mind too, as far as like how long it'll take and now all that kind of stuff, is who the bank is. Lots of times, like, I don't want to name any names, I guess, but the
larger banks.
The larger banks are very slow to turn around the process. So you find a short sale that might be a good deal, and maybe all the arrows are pointing to do it. If it's with one of the bigger banks, one of the larger banks, it still may take 6 months to a year before you get an answer, which means that you could wait a year to hear no, we're not going to take this offer.
So that, with the experience that we have, what we educate our buyers when they enter into the world, and we hear all the time, everybody wants a deal. So we hear all the time, hey, Allie, we hear all the time, people want to know, hey, I want to get a deal, I want to do a short sale, a foreclosure. And that is, to me, the big difference. And I just had this conversation with the buyer this weekend. With a short sale, there's all the fun, all the sort of nonsense, and we'll get into that in a little bit, with property condition that you get with a foreclosure, but the added element of not knowing whether or not the bank will accept the deal or not.
Right.
And on top of that, there's a lot of red tape that we talked about last week from the seller side. I mean, it's just about as bad as getting a loan, maybe worse.
Yeah.
I mean, all the paperwork you have to get in, tax returns and your hardship letter and your bank statements and all this stuff. And then, of course, you have to depend on that seller that they're going to do everything that they're supposed to do to get to that point too. So there's a whole lot of uncertainty, and it's really murky waters. And then with the real estate market appreciating in the last year, banks have gotten more cocky and they've asked for more money.
Yep.
So we're seeing a lot more counter offers to short sales than we did before. And so what we try to do here is we don't discourage anybody. If that's your dream house and you're willing to take the risk, we'll help you.
The other part of that too, Jim, is when you're writing on a short sale, it's important that you do the CMA. Guys, we've seen it several times that the buyer wants to buy this house and the bank comes back and they want what fair market, they want what all the other homes standard sales are selling for. So why would you wait 6 months to buy this house when you could be settled in 40 days or 30 days, depending on what your loan is, on a house that's very similar, same kind of condition, same kind of money? It doesn't make, it really just depends on the house and the short sale. And there's a lot of different variables.
And part of the quagmire too is your loan. It's very difficult to get loan terms out past 60 or 90 days. And even at 60 or 90 days, it's going to cost you, the money's going to cost you a lot more than it would at 30 days. And in a short sale, you could have an infinite amount of time. So you might be able to buy right now at 4%, and 6 months from now, rates might be 4.5%. You may not even qualify. So there's a lot to think about. So, and then another thing you really have to think about is property condition. So you get through all of this, and there's another thing, Dana. We'll do, somebody suggested we do a little more question and answer, and I kind of like that idea. So,
yeah, okay.
Does it make sense to do an inspection on a short sale before the bank has approved the price?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Because you're going to end up spending $350, $400 on an inspection on a property that they may come back and say, no, we're not going to do your deal. Or we want $25,000 more for this property than what your list price is, than what you offered.
Right.
So no, absolutely not. We don't do.
Okay. So what would be one argument for doing the inspection ahead of time? And I agree with you, by the way, but there is an argument.
The argument could be said, which would help you if you were going to go in lower on price. You could go in with a list of repairs, say, items A through Z are wrong with this house, and this is, kind of validates why you've come in at this much lower sales price than what it's listed at. So,
and the other thing, the thing that I think about sometimes is if that, and I'll do this if the house is in bad, because one thing you don't want is to wait that 6 months, get everything accepted, and then you go and you do the inspection and the house is in terrible shape. It's 100 times worse. And that's always the case. You can go into a house that's perfect. I mean, if they did an inspection on a brand new house right now, there'd be 20 things the inspector dinged. So certainly, if you were to go into a house that somebody has been living in that hasn't been making a mortgage payment for 2 or 3 years, they're not maintaining the furnace, they're not anything. I mean,
and then also the other thing to that too is everybody is different.
Right.
So it's there's not one answer that blankets
right.
it, because you might have somebody who's very handy, who, as long as there's not a cracked foundation or a hole in the roof, that's not a skylight, you know, they're very capable of doing those sorts of things. But if there's somebody who's going to have to hire, you know, and pay retail prices for all of these fixes that need to be done, then that's maybe you would want to do the inspection beforehand.
So the moral of the story is, again, you either spend the money and you're really committed to this transaction only to find out that you're not going, or you wait and you've got all your time tied up and then you find out that the house is a complete hunk of junk and you're back to square one anyway. So it's something you got to think about. Can you get a deal? Yeah. The deals are not out there nearly like they were, and thankfully, you know, the market is stabilized, so there's not nearly the number of short sales are out there. There's still a real, we'll talk about, I think we'll get into foreclosures next week, but there's this, what they call shadow inventory. And that is partially short sales, it's partially foreclosures. It's houses that the bank hasn't gotten around to foreclose on. And there are times when they will incentivize sellers to participate in a short sale as opposed to doing the foreclosure. So, but I would say for sure, you're going to get a house that has deferred maintenance, that, you know, basically has been neglected for 2 or 3 years. And then the other thing sort of tied into that is when you write the contract, you got to write the contract as is. So if there's even so, this is important too, because with lender repairs.
Yeah, well,
How do we handle that, Dana?
They're not typically going to make the repairs on there at all.
If you get a government loan, if you watched our shows, you know that we've talked about FHA and VA loans, and there's minimum safety requirements for houses, and it can be as simple as cracked windows and chipping and peeling paint. That's Dana's. And the appliances have to work. They don't have to be pretty, but they have to work. And a lot of times you get in a short sale, the seller is doing absolutely nothing.
The seller is doing nothing and the bank is doing nothing, which then means in order to get your loan, these things have to be taken care of. So guess who's doing it? You are. The buyer is doing it. So, you know, you're potentially investing money into a home that you don't own yet. And it's real estate. If something can go wrong, it's going to go wrong. I mean, there's, you know, deals break up and we put them back together all the time, but they're, you know, especially dealing with the banks. I mean, they're just, it's difficult. It's make sure you.
And another, I know we've been kind of poo-pooing this whole notion, but another little fun nugget is, you know, they take their sweet time, months and months and months to get to the point of approval, and then they want you to close in 3 weeks. And that, and in our case, we generally advise our clients not to do inspections, not do all those things. So basically, we're on a holding pattern until we get that approval.
Appraisal, all that stuff.
And just procedurally, there's a form in our contract, if there's a short sale, that specifies when the timelines begin, and almost always appraisal, inspections, financing, all of those contingencies fire up once we have the approval. So, but again, then the banks being the banks fire up and make things a lot more difficult to get things done in a timely fashion. And sometimes you can get lucky and the bank will allow you a little more time, but not always. So, and again, you're still depending on a seller who is probably not real excited, not real happy, and not real interested in making the process work. Right. So my 2 cents worth, if it's the house of your dreams, great. If not, and you really, really want to deal and you're handy and you're prepared to deal with something, then, you know, I suggest we look at foreclosures. And again, that's something we'll talk about next week, get into the nitty-gritties of that. Dana, you have anything to add to the short sale mixture? They're no fun.
They're not fun for anybody involved in the transaction. The seller is, you know, they're upset because they're losing their house, so they're not happy, and they're not necessarily going to make things easy. You know, the bank's upset because they're losing money, and they don't, you know, the bank, just so everybody knows, banks don't have any personalities whatsoever. They may as well be a computer. They have their bottom line number, and that's the end of it. They're like stamp pushers. That's it. Boom, boom. You either make the cut or you don't make the cut. You're not getting into emotions and all that kind of stuff. But to add to one thing leads to another. But another fun nugget with the short sale is they depend on what they call BPOs for value. So once we get a contract, then the bank sends, it's sort of a poor man's appraisal. Basically, they find real estate agents to go out to the property and basically do a market analysis and come back with what they feel like is a fair market value. And they use that, and sometimes they have their own internal algorithms and formulas to figure things out, but that BPO is a key component, and that person is getting paid anywhere from $50 to $100 to do an appraisal. Essentially, it's the same amount of work. It's a lot of work. And so you don't, generally speaking, we run into all sorts of weird things from those. So guess how much time they spend on making sure that number is correct.
We don't want to generalize. I'm sure there's people out here, maybe some that are watching, that do a great job.
Right.
But we've seen our fair share of odd things that way. So we're right at our 15, 16 minutes here. So we're going to wrap this up with the bow. One thing I wanted to mention, I like to, and we've got plenty of crazy bad things in the world today, so we try to keep this light. My alma mater, the University of Maryland, the Clark Companies, it's a big commercial, commercial construction company in D.C. Mr. James Clark passed away in 2015. He went to Maryland on a college scholarship in the 40s, on a state scholarship, and he never forgot that he got that scholarship, and it launched his career. And he just gave the biggest endowment in Maryland's history, and one of the top 10 endowments ever to a public university, $235 million. So, and he's going to give it back. It's almost all going to scholarships and student aid and good stuff. So anyway, that kind of made my heart warm about 20 or 30 minutes ago when I read that. So,
okay.
Dana, anything else?
To update, I don't know if we wanted to talk this week about the Hispanic Festival in Annapolis.
Yep.
On the 14th.
Yep. 14th. Saturday the 14th.
Yeah,
so we'll talk
have a booth.
A lot about that next week. But we're going to have a booth there. Our own Donna Laverderde.
Yeah.
What's that?
Landeverd.
Landeverd.
Yep.
Thanks. I always have trouble there. So, and we also want to welcome our new agent, Nancy Gowan. You'll see her on our Facebook page this week, but she's a brand new agent, and she's going to be great. She's hitting the ground running, and we're looking forward to seeing her name on the boards behind us a lot. So, all right. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Have a good night.